Ryan Callahan and Emily Brooks looked like the perfect newlyweds. He a respected police officer, she a kind-hearted nurse. But just days after saying "I do," their honeymoon in paradise ended with Emily beaten to death and Ryan in handcuffs. What happened behind the closed doors of their luxury villa in Bora Bora would shock the world and expose the dark side of a man no one truly knew. Ryan Callahan had always appeared to be the kind of man others admired. A well-groomed, respected police officer in Houston, he built a reputation over 12 years of service as someone who was calm under pressure and dependable in a crisis. He was often seen volunteering at community events and mentoring younger recruits. The community respected him, his colleagues trusted him, and his record was nearly spotless. Standing at 6 feet tall, with sharp blue eyes and a quiet authority, Ryan looked every bit the ideal officer and the ideal husband. Emily Brooks, by contrast, was known for her warmth and gentle nature. A pediatric nurse with a passion for helping children, she lit up any room she entered. Her co-workers often described her as sweet, dedicated, and emotionally strong. She had been raised in a small town in Alabama, where her values were shaped by family, faith, and hard work. Moving to Houston to pursue a career, she had dreams of starting a family and living a peaceful, happy life. Their paths crossed at a charity fundraiser for a children's hospital. Ryan was there as part of a police department outreach initiative, while Emily attended with her hospital team. He approached her at the refreshment table. Within weeks, they were inseparable. Their connection was fast and intense. Friends noticed how quickly things escalated between them. Dinners, weekend trips, meeting each other's families. Ryan was attentive and generous, always bringing flowers, always posting photos of them together online. Emily, swept off her feet, began to believe she had found her forever person. Months later, they were engaged. Some friends thought it was too fast, especially Emily's sister, who voiced concerns about how little time they'd really had to know each other. But Emily defended the relationship passionately. She believed in following her heart, and Ryan had become her whole world. Their engagement photos were dreamy, set in a blooming garden, with soft sunlight bathing them in gold. Comments on social media poured in: goals, match made in heaven, you two are perfect. They planned a destination wedding, intimate and picturesque, held on a secluded beach in Hawaii with just close friends and family. The ceremony was beautiful. Emily wore a flowing lace gown and carried white orchids. Ryan stood proudly in his crisp suit, looking like the picture of joy. Guests remembered how he kissed her hand during the vows and held her tightly during the slow dance. Everything about the day looked perfect, but beneath the surface, not everything was as it seemed. Shortly after the wedding, they departed for their honeymoon in Bora Bora. Emily had always dreamed of visiting the island. Crystal, clear lagoons, luxurious overwater bungalows, and warm tropical nights. It was everything she had hoped for. Ryan made sure their accommodations were top tier. He told her it was the least he could do for his bride. The first few days were quiet, serene. Photos from the trip showed them on jet skis, sipping drinks at sunset, and lounging in hammocks. Yet behind closed doors, subtle signs of tension began to appear. And soon, paradise would turn into a nightmare. The first few days in Bora Bora passed like a dream. Their overwater villa offered stunning views of the lagoon, and the staff at the luxury resort catered to their every need. Emily smiled for the camera during excursions and held Ryan's hand during walks along the beach. But as the days went on, the atmosphere between the newlyweds began to shift, subtle at first, but noticeable to the people around them. The resort employees, trained to be discreet, began to observe moments that didn't align with the joyful honeymoon image the couple projected. Emily often appeared distracted, her expression distant. She spoke softly and avoided eye contact, especially when Ryan was near. At the breakfast buffet, she would wait for him to order before choosing her food, hesitating as if afraid to make the wrong choice. Ryan, meanwhile, seemed increasingly irritable. His tone was sharp and his body language was rigid. He monitored her closely, occasionally glancing over her shoulder when she was on her phone and keeping his arm firmly around her when they walked the resort grounds. One night, A couple staying in the villa next door overheard what they described as a heated argument. It started with raised voices and ended with something heavy slamming against the floor. The couple debated reporting it, but ultimately didn't. They convinced themselves it was a lover's quarrel, something that would resolve by morning, but the next day Emily appeared at the pool with a long, sleeved cover-up despite the intense heat. Her sunglasses stayed on even while swimming. A staff member, tasked with tidying their room later that afternoon, noticed that Emily's makeup bag was filled with concealers and foundation several shades darker than her skin tone, likely used to cover bruises. During a sunset dinner on their fourth night, tension boiled over. The waiter assigned to their table later told authorities that Ryan's voice was low but intense. He was accusing Emily of lying to him, of hiding things from him. Emily sat frozen, barely eating. She looked like she wanted to vanish into the floor. Eventually, she stood up and walked out of the restaurant, with Ryan following close behind. Their half-finished wine glasses and untouched main courses were left behind. From that moment, things took a darker turn. That night, no one heard or saw Emily again. The next morning, Ryan appeared alone at the front desk just after sunrise. He told the receptionist that his wife had gone for an early swim and hadn't returned. He appeared calm but concerned. Resort security was alerted, and a search began within the hour. Boats were sent out, staff combed the beaches, and guests were quietly asked if they'd seen her. As the sun rose higher over the turquoise waters, so did the fear. Emily Brooks had vanished. No screams had been heard, no witnesses had come forward, and no clear explanation existed. In a place marketed as heaven on earth, something terrible had happened, and the cracks in the story were only beginning to show. When Ryan reported Emily missing, resort staff quickly sprang into action. At first, everyone hoped for a simple explanation. Maybe she'd gone for a swim and wandered to another part of the island. Maybe she'd taken a paddleboard out or was exploring a nearby trail. But as hours passed without any sign of her, hope began to fade. Security reviewed footage from cameras positioned around the main walkways of the resort. Strangely, there was no sign of Emily leaving the villa that morning. The only person captured on camera exiting their bungalow was Ryan, carrying what appeared to be a duffel bag. He walked along the dock to a secluded side beach, an area not monitored by cameras. He returned about 45 minutes later, empty-handed. Ryan told authorities that Emily was an early riser and had gone for a swim alone while he was still asleep. He claimed he woke up around 6:30 a.m. and noticed she was missing. Her flip-flops were on the deck and her towel was gone. He said he assumed she was in the water nearby, but when she didn't return after some time, he became concerned and contacted the front desk. His story was simple, but something felt off. Resort staff began to grow uneasy. A housekeeper who had cleaned the couple's room the previous afternoon quietly told her supervisor that Emily looked upset and had a fresh bruise on her wrist. She had asked for extra towels and kept glancing toward the door, as if expecting someone to barge in. The housekeeper didn't want to get involved at the time, but now the memory seemed important. Police arrived and began a more thorough investigation. They searched the villa and immediately noticed inconsistencies. One of the bathroom towels had dark stains that had been poorly rinsed. At first glance, they looked like wine spills, but a quick chemical test revealed traces of blood. On the edge of the wooden deck, tiny droplets of what appeared to be blood were found, as if someone had been injured but tried to clean it up. The duvet had been recently washed, but the underside showed faint smudges, another red flag. Emily's phone was found tucked away in a drawer, turned off. Her passport and wallet were still in the villa. All of this made the theory of her going for a casual swim seem less and less plausible. When authorities gained access to her messaging apps, they discovered days' worth of messages to her sister, describing how Ryan had changed since they arrived. She felt trapped, she wrote. She had begun to regret the marriage and was afraid of how he would react if she brought up the idea of leaving. By day 2, the case had shifted from a missing person to a suspected homicide. Divers began searching the lagoon. It was an expansive area, and the currents were unpredictable, but they focused on spots near the villa and along the secluded beach Ryan had been seen walking toward. On the third day, a diver found something weighted down between coral shelves: Emily's body. She was still in her swimsuit, with bruises on her face and head. The evidence was undeniable. She hadn't drowned. She had been beaten, then discarded into the water like she was nothing. A honeymoon that was meant to celebrate a new life had instead ended hers. The discovery of Emily's body sent shockwaves through the resort and the small island community. The investigation, which had already been escalating rapidly, now became a murder case. Her body had been found in a shallow reef area, weighed down with stones and wrapped in a hotel bed sheet, one that matched the linens from their villa. Her injuries were consistent with blunt force trauma, and the medical examiner determined that she had been beaten to death hours before her body entered the water. There were no defensive wounds, suggesting she may have been caught off guard or incapacitated before the fatal blows were delivered. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. Investigators combed through Ryan's belongings and found inconsistencies in his timeline. His duffel bag, the one seen in the early morning security footage, was missing. A search of the nearby wooded area turned up the bag partially buried in sand, its contents soaked and damaged. Inside were blood, stained clothes, a broken phone, later determined to be Emily's, and a heavy flashlight with traces of blood and hair on it. The flashlight, investigators believed, was the murder weapon. When questioned again, Ryan maintained his innocence. He stuck to his original story, repeating the claim that Emily had gone for a swim and never came back. But under pressure, his story began to unravel. He couldn't explain the blood stains in the room, the discarded towel, or why he failed to report his wife missing for nearly an hour after discovering her absence. He brushed off the evidence as strange coincidences and insisted that the blood came from a cut he had suffered days earlier, but police weren't buying it. The forensic evidence mounted. DNA confirmed the blood in the villa, on the towel, and on the flashlight belonged to Emily. The timeline showed she was likely killed late at night, not early in the morning as Ryan claimed. Neighbors in nearby villas reported hearing another loud argument hours before Ryan said she went missing. One guest even recalled hearing a woman scream, but assumed it was part of a heated lovers' quarrel, not a murder in progress. Authorities secured Emily's phone data, including her deleted messages. Some of the most alarming texts were ones she sent to her sister just hours before her death. In them, she expressed that she was afraid to go to sleep. She wrote that Ryan had gone through her phone earlier that day and accused her of cheating with a coworker back home. She had tried to calm him down, but he was furious. She ended the message with, "If something happens to me, it's him." That message became the emotional centerpiece of the case. Ryan, who had once been seen as a protective husband and model officer, was now exposed as a violent and jealous man with a controlling streak. His clean public image was shattered. Within days of the autopsy results, Ryan was arrested by local authorities and charged with the murder of his wife. He did not resist arrest. The mask had slipped, and the truth was undeniable. What had started as a romantic getaway had ended in brutality and death. The fairy tale had become a nightmare. News of Ryan Callahan's arrest spread quickly, first across Bora Bora and then across the globe. The story was too shocking to ignore. A decorated American police officer, newly married, accused of murdering his wife on their honeymoon in paradise. The headlines wrote themselves, and media outlets rushed to cover every detail. As more information came to light, public outrage swelled. The case didn't just raise questions about Ryan's actions in Bora Bora. It opened the door to examining who he really was behind the badge. Back in Houston, Ryan's police department faced immense scrutiny. Colleagues who once praised his professionalism began to come forward with stories they had previously kept quiet. Some officers recalled moments when Ryan lost his temper during minor disagreements. A former girlfriend contacted reporters, revealing that she had ended their relationship years earlier due to his jealousy and emotional manipulation. She had never gone to the police, fearing no one would believe her over a respected officer. Now her silence haunted her. Emily's family flew to Bora Bora to identify her body and begin the painful process of bringing her home. Her sister, already devastated by the loss, struggled to come to terms with how all of her warnings had gone unheard. In interviews, she spoke about the change she had seen in Emily over the months leading up to the wedding, how her once bright spirit had become dimmed by anxiety, how she had second thoughts but went through with the marriage anyway. The guilt weighed heavily, though everyone reminded her there was no way to predict something so horrific. Ryan was extradited to the United States after negotiations between Tahitian authorities and U.S. law enforcement. He was held without bail while awaiting trial in Texas, charged with first-degree murder. In court, he appeared stoic, emotionless, and avoided eye contact with Emily's grieving parents. Prosecutors laid out a detailed case built on digital evidence, forensic proof, and witness testimony from resort staff and fellow guests. Emily's final text to her sister, "If something happens to me, it's him," was read aloud in court, leaving the room in stunned silence. The defense attempted to argue that Ryan had a mental breakdown, triggered by jealousy and alcohol, and that the murder was not premeditated, but the jury was unmoved. They saw the blood evidence, the hidden duffel bag, the bruises Emily tried to conceal, and the isolation he subjected her to even during their honeymoon. After a brief deliberation, Ryan Callahan was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In the months following the verdict, Emily's family launched the Emily Brooks Foundation, dedicated to supporting women in abusive relationships and educating communities about warning signs of coercive control. Her story became a painful example of how abuse can hide behind charm and uniforms, how dangerous love can become when masked by control and violence. Though justice was served, the tragedy left scars on everyone who knew her. The turquoise waters of Bora Bora, once a symbol of serenity and romance, now stood as a haunting reminder of a life taken far too soon.